All right, so let's discuss some good things and bad things from that call and from the earnings itself. I mean, we talked about the earnings numbers itself with Sam, and there were some good things like gross margins potentially bottoming at 76%. Because if those start to go up, I think the street will get more excited. And the $2.5 billion share purchase payment. So those are two things from the numbers themselves. Gross margins bottomed, raised guidance or beat guidance expectations at 22% versus 20% for Q3, and buying back some shares at 2.5 billion. Outside of that, so those were like the three good things I got from the call itself. I mean, you guys heard it as well. This is not just me. You know, about 700 of you also were listening to this call. I just posted this on Twitter. This is the most uninspiring call I have heard in tech. I mean, we've listened to a decent amount of earnings calls. This one was not good. This one was just not good in terms of inspiring confidence. Wall Street said Snowflake at 150 in December 2022 and Palantir at $6. It was obvious who was going to win. Palantir now is at 32. Snowflake's down 18% at 123, down about 9% after hours. Let's see if it bottoms a little bit. It's down at 8.1%. We'll talk about the stock in a bit, but it is down even more. What I posted just now on Twitter is that I think that if there's no excitement, you know, when you speak with Jensen Huang on the big stage, surely you should be able to inspire the investor base to be excited about the future of Snowflake, or new investors like us in the chat who maybe don't have a position. We see something that we get out of the CEO, CFO that inspires us to think that, hey, there's something here. I don't see it. I don't see it at all. And I don't think it's just about the numbers when it comes to investing in a tech company. We're obviously seeing that with Palantir. Palantir, the most expensive name in software. It's expensive not just because of their numbers are reaccelerating, but because Karp makes you care. Shyam Sankar makes you care. The CTO, when you're listening to him, the CEO, when you're listening to him, there's at least a video of like how they have a good microphone. It's not like a microphone from 1990. You feel something. And because you feel something, that it's not rocket science, you buy the stock, right? Like when you feel an emotion, you actually care about investing in the company. I think there were a couple moments during this call where I didn't feel anything. So the first question that I thought was the most important question, which is, what is your go-to-market around AI? I think Jeffries asked this question around, hey, you guys have this data warehouse and it's been going good for you for the past 10 years and like it's worked, and that's kind of, you know, that was SaaS 1.0. Now we're entering into the world of AI. Where do you see that data warehouse using Cortex AI in particular, which is their proprietary AI offering, to give you some unique benefit that A, accelerates revenue, B, and this is the most important part of the question, integrates a customer to be so sticky with Snowflake that even though they're probably not going to leave from the data warehousing solutions product, they're going to upsell into the AI products, which is semantic search, retrieval augmented generation, all of these different things you can implement within your data. I don't think they had a really strong answer to that. I mean, the answer was first Sridhar started saying, you know, it was kind of a little arrogant. He was like, well, first of all, we have been a leader in data science for the past blah, 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 blah. And I was just like, okay, that's not, if you're going to say it like that, if you're going to puff your chest out, at least be like, really puff your chest out, right? If you're going to half-ass it, then that's not going to sound that exciting. Number two, I don't think he explained a platform approach to AI, at least the way I think of AIP. Like the way I think of AIP from Palantir is it is a layer on top of Foundry, which is the foundational infrastructure of the data analytics of your business. And then there's use cases from AIP on top of that. That goes beyond, chatting with your data. I didn't understand what the broad approach is. And again, as an investor, you don't need to literally know every little specific way you're going to implement AI into customers' business operations, but you need to know at a high level, how are you going to bring the customer on a journey with AI? You know, why is Palantir powering all of Wendy's supply chain at 6,400 restaurants? Because there is a unique way that Wendy's thinks of their supply chain operations, that Palantir can pair their core data within the ontology on top of AIP to then provide some type of value. And at a high level, that makes sense, even if you're not a super integrated person in regards to the tech ecosystem. From this call, for the average person, and I saw a lot of you saying in the chat when he was trying to answer this question, you just couldn't find that answer. Or like you couldn't make sense of that answer. Snowflake right here down about 8%. Again, we'll talk about the stock in a second, but in terms of the earnings call, I couldn't see the vision on the go-to-market in regards to AI in any meaningful capacity. And I didn't understand when, you know, he brought up Disney as an example. And really the example, I still don't get how Disney is using AI in their theme parks to become more efficient. And if there is some massive use case that Disney is using because of Cortex or because of the integration of Cortex and their data lakehouse, then you have to spell that out for me, right? Like you have to really explain why is that so valuable? How do the use cases compound? This is why Dan Ives, I think, is such a good Palantir analyst, because when he talks to these customers and he then goes on these TV shows and talks about why the use cases are compounding, you can easily say as an investor, okay, if these customers are getting use cases and value that are AI oriented on top of the ontology, then if Palantir can just keep scaling that on the top line, along with making their margins more efficient, which is what we're seeing right now, then there you go. They're going to win. I don't see that with Snowflake. I just, and it doesn't help, that Disney has been struggling for the past 2 years at this point. So again, from a broad perspective, data lakehouses, they're not that special. And if you talk to some Palantir employees, including Chad, Palantir can do a lot of the things that Snowflake does, right? It's not some like complicated proprietary moat, but Snowflake's very sticky. They've been there for a long time. Their go-to-market and sales over the past 5 years has been strong. It's just what's next? And why aren't you something of the past? Why aren't you something that's going to be commoditized by the hyperscalers as well, if they choose to commoditize you? Snowflake right here down about 8%. So that's the first part of the call that I just didn't like in regards to AI. I personally did not see massive momentum in terms of what they were explaining. Now, let me be very clear. They might have said something really special about AI and their go-to-market. And they might have said something that I missed that was like very strong in regards to how they're going to transition customers into this AI revolution. But if the layman can't get it, if hundreds of people in the chat don't get it, I don't think it's about being biased here. I think it's about like, hey, the communication is bad. And these are the calls where thousands, tens of thousands of investors or potential investors are listening. The communication can't suck on these calls. This is the one time you get 4 of them a year where you're able to really communicate, because it's not like Sridhar is going on podcasts, and really explaining his story. This is the moment where you got to talk about it. And I don't think we really heard it on this call. Now, the second thing is about the CFO. This CFO needs to go, dude. This CFO is one of the biggest jerks I've seen in my entire life. And look, he's probably an effective CEO in a lot of different ways, but as a public persona, like, get someone else to talk on these calls, dude, because this guy is aggressive. He's mean. Analysts are asking very basic questions about guidance, or can you give us a little bit more color? And he just throws out the coloring book like he's some mean teacher, and a third grader's trying to color, and you throw out the coloring book because they color outside of the lines. Like, it's just very, like, he sounded irritated across every question. He sounded annoyed at every question. He sounded he began his like reading of the press release almost as if he like didn't want to be there. You can just tell in someone's voice. And this is a really easy tell. The intonation and inflection of your voice, that affects the stock price. So the stock is just being traded on how people feel about the company outside of the algorithms. If people don't feel like you even care about the company, why should I care and put my hard-earned dollars into the stock, hoping that it compounds, when it sounds like you don't give a shit? And if you don't give a shit, then why should I give a shit? And that's the one thing I don't think anyone can say against Palantir. Even when the stock was at $6, Karp was passionate, right? Karp banging on the table. It was because he knew that, like, hey, they're struggling right now, and he really thinks they're going to overcome this. But he's just annoyed at the moment. But he feels something, right? And the reason he banged on the table was because someone asked him about the government. The government historically CAGR is at 30%. It wasn't in 2022, but he knows that government deals are very lumpy, and so he was trying to get that point across. You can, even if it's frustration, you can tell that the guy cares. I don't know if this guy cared. I don't know if this guy was like, watching a movie during the earnings call. I don't know if he like just doesn't care about the company. I don't even know if this guy talks to Sridhar. I don't know if they have a good relationship. There was just no synergistic energy in regards to the CTO, CEO, and CFO. They were talking over each other. It was really weird in terms of trying to understand what management team am I investing in. Another example here is Robinhood. Jason Warnick and Vlad, they complement each other when they're talking on the call. When Jason adds something, he adds something of value. And Vlad piggybacks off of Jason's question, the CFO and the CEO, they come together, and you feel, you don't know if the stock's going to go up or down, but you feel your money is at least being protected by people that give a shit about your investment. And this CFO and CEO just doesn't, they don't sound like they care. Like, they genuinely, and you know why? When someone says, hey, can you give us a little bit of more explanation on why this is what this is? And he says, Tyler, like he addressed the analyst by his first name. He's like, Tyler, we don't do that type of stuff. So that's what our answer is. Like, it's just like, what, dude? Like, what? How can you say that? How can you be that like mean to a guy? All the analyst is trying to do is like figure out if he should put a sell rating or a buy rating on your stock. Like, These are not the guys to be aggressive against, especially if they're asking very simple questions at the end of the day. Some of you said they don't have answers. Well, that's a good point. They might not have any real answer. And again, I don't think it should be that hard. Like when Karp is asked about AI, when Karp is asked about LLMs, when Karp is asked about ontologies, there's a very direct answer. I know this because I asked him the same question myself. Like, why are you, I told you guys this a bunch of times, but he was like, I think Palantir can be one of the biggest companies in the world without thousands of employees. And I was like, why are you so confident about that? And he said, because the rise of LLMs will help us operationalize ontologies. And I was like, okay, I get it. I understand what you're trying to say. And then he goes further than that in all these different interviews where he talks about what you get value from an LLM. Like it's night and day when you hear him explaining the value of AIP in the context of the ontology, and then a broad bird's eye view on the overall concept of an LLM versus Sridhar struggling to explain why Disney is getting value out of Snowflake's Cortex AI product. And I think that explains why the stock is 40% down year to date. Now, let's talk about the stock. I do not think the numbers necessarily justify 8% down at this point, 40% down year to date, because the numbers are strong SaaS numbers. The problem is a lot of times stocks trade on emotions and not numbers. And I think the emotions here are off. So tomorrow, I think there's two possibilities. I think if it goes up, it's because 8% is oversold after already being down 30% year to date. And a lot of institutional buyers come in and they say, hey, this is too cheap for the growth. Management, even though they're not exciting, they're going to keep, the momentum up. Gross margins have bottomed. They're buying back shares. You can make a bull case for that. And I think maybe tomorrow we stay flat at 125, maybe gap up a little bit back to 130 in anticipation for rate cuts in September. I can also see tomorrow this thing tanks another 10% because everyone has fundamentally lost hope, even though the numbers are good. They don't feel any confidence. Again, the stock was down 6% before earnings or into earnings. The call started, it went down 2%. So the call that's supposed to save some of these issues really hasn't helped. It bottomed at 123.25, right now at 124.20. I think that narrative is possible as well tomorrow. What's going to happen? I have no clue. We had good macro data today. We kind of got through that macro data. I mean, the 800,000 jobs was not amazing macro data, but it was colder than expected. We've been green basically for the past 2 weeks. I think we're probably due for a little bit of volatility to the downside. Maybe that happens tomorrow. Maybe that happens on Friday and it's a regular market, sell off on Fridays. But I don't know if the macro is going to have that much of an impact in the context of Snowflake at this point. I think tomorrow investors need to decide, are they willing to go long on this company? Is there an AI narrative they care about? Or are they done with this? Do they dump it? And does that help Palantir at the end of the day? Because money starts to leave Snowflake for Palantir. Palantir was up after hours at one point. It's slightly down right now at 32.49. Maybe a lot of people just say, you know what, this is stupid. Like we just don't see the value to staying here and they leave. So let's see how it plays out. Again, I do think it's oversold from a technical perspective. Being down 8% after these numbers, I do think it's oversold. I just don't know if the market feels excited about this. The other thing I want to say here is stock-based compensation is disgusting, dude. It is absolutely disgusting on this company. I was looking at a little bit of their SBC. I'm going to go through their numbers more in depth tonight. But a couple things. So over the last 6 months, Snowflake has generated $430 million of adjusted free cash flow. Okay. Stock-based comp is $733 million in the past 6 months, which if we divide that by 2 quarters, that's over $360 million per quarter. Palantir by comparison is at 140. It was 114 2 quarters ago. I think now it's at 140. So basically Palantir is half of Snowflake's SBC per quarter. Palantir has more than half the employees. Basically, I think 60% less the employees of Snowflake. And Palantir's free cash flow is going to be $800 to $1 billion. So Snowflake, even if you double their free cash flow, that would be $862 million. Palantir, if they reach the high end or at least the midpoint of their guidance, they should get closer to $900 million. So they would be $1 million above in free cash flow. And their stock-based comp, if we just annualize, or 140 times 4, that would be $560 million. Snowflake, if we do that times 2, Palantir is spending $1 billion less, $906 million less on stock-based comp. So then this begs the question, why are you paying $1 billion of stock-based comp if the growth is not matching higher than at least 30 to 40%? I mean, they touched 29% this quarter. They guided to 22% next quarter. If you're not growing at 30% and you're doing $1.4 billion in stock-based compensation and you're not profitable, feels like a clusterfuck, dude. It feels like an absolute clusterfuck. And then there's no explanation of where the AI moat is. I mean, the only good positive thing is that, as Jared says, the buybacks will get less expensive. If the stock tanks to 100, they can buy back a lot of stock cheap. And I guess, that's one good point of this. But I don't know. Tomorrow, I'm actually confused, dude. I want to say the street really looks at this and they're just not excited and they dump it tomorrow. But I also want to say it's already down 8%. How much lower does it go tomorrow? So I don't know. Tomorrow, we'll see what happens. But not the best call in the context of Snowflake. So those are my thoughts on Snowflake. I think it makes sense at the end of the day that we all picked Palantir, or at least most of us picked Palantir over this one. There's charisma, there's energy, there's charm with Palantir. With Snowflake, you just don't have any of that. And there would be more if Slootman was there, but Slootman's gone. And I think that has, just not helped them over the past couple months as well.